The date is March 4th, the time is 10 PM, and runner Nick Style is about to make Dark Souls 2 speedrunning history. He is about to achieve the first ever sub 5 minute last giant time in a legitimate Scholar of the First Sin any percent speedrun. The first time a minute barrier has been broken in the segment since the run's inception. Less than 1 year prior, the best recorded time in the segment had been a 5:09. At the time, the thought of lowering that time by 10 whole seconds seemed impossible, which leaves one question: what happened? Our story begins in September 2020. At the time, there were 4 active runners of Scholar of the First Sin any percent: Nick Style, Doom338, Cyrelia, and myself. Other than the obvious leaderboard times in races, one of the main forms of friendly competition between us was competing for who had the best golds on certain segments. A gold is the fastest a runner has ever completed a certain section of the run. Of the 16 different segments, by far the most competitive was the gold for the last giant segment. Because this is the first segment of the run, it is usually the segment runners have spent the most time running, and therefore would have more optimized golds than most other segments. At the time, out of the 4 of us, only Nick and I had 509 golds, but we both knew a 508 was more than achievable. On the 4th of October, Nick got it with a time of 5:08.97. A sub of 5:09 by less than 2 frames. This was the first ever recorded 5:08, however runner Fujo Herrera claimed to have a 5:08.8 that he got off camera.
Talvez. Ah, 508, moleque!
The run starts with Nick unequipping his gear and running to the character creation hut. In DS2 speedruns, we want to have as little equip load as possible, as often as possible. This is because the lower our equip load, the faster our stamina regeneration, which results in faster running sections. At character creation, he uses a 1-letter name and chooses Bandit and Bonfire aesthetic. These are important for the rest of the run for reasons I won't go into here. He then runs through Things Betwixt and does a jump commonly referred to as the Bino jump. He then talks to the Emerald Herald to get the Estus Flask and lights the Medulla bonfire. After that, he heads towards the Forest of Fallen Giants. He does some convenience menuing while waiting for the gate to open, then drops down into the river to get a small soul. Continuing through the forest, he ignores most enemies, except at this ladder, where he baits an attack from 2 hollows to allow for safer climbing. In Cardinal Tower, he performs 2 tricks. The first is what is known as a soul cancel, which allows him to use the soul item he picked up earlier while in NPC dialogue. He uses the souls from this item to purchase a firebomb before lighting the Cardinal Tower bonfire. After lighting the bonfire, he equips the firebomb and performs the second trick, Bomb Wall. Normally in this area, you would drop down a ladder, run through a fog wall up a branch and across a wall. Here, the player will find a large stack of barrels propped up against a wall. If these barrels are hit with something that deals fire damage, such as the firebomb, they explode, destroying the wall and creating a shortcut to the bonfire. However, the hitbox of the firebomb is larger than the thickness of the wall. This means if you stand in a certain spot, throw the firebomb while looking down, the bomb will clip the barrels from the other side of the wall, revealing the shortcut early and saving 20 seconds. After destroying the wall, Nick runs through the area towards the last giant. He baits the 2 hollows before the fog wall into attacks before rolling through them, allowing him to safely pass the fog. After that, he takes the elevator down and fights the last giant with the axe. The last giant fight is pretty consistently 40 seconds long, however he does have an RNG backstep attack which can lose you 2 seconds. After killing the giant, he uses the dark sign to warp back to Cardinal Tower, and the segment is timed based on the loading screen for this warp. This split was very good, and got the Scholar Any% Last Giant segment onto the DS2 unofficial leaderboards. The DS2 unofficial leaderboards are a pastebin file moderated by 2Red, which records all of the most competitive segment times, and some leaderboards for meme run categories. Nick would go on to lower his time twice over the following 2 weeks. First with a 508.64 and then with a 508.20. He managed to improve on his earlier times by getting a faster pickup on the River Soul and by cleaning up his pathing and things betwixt. Nick was the undisputed champion of the Last Giant split, and it would be almost a month before anyone could challenge his time. At this point, Fujo Herrera returned to running Any%. Fujo had dabbled in Any% before, but until this point had been grinding for the world record in the Any% Old Souls category. After returning to the category for only a few days, he almost immediately began getting consistent low 509 and high 508 giant times. The pressure was on to see which runner would get the first 507. On the 12th of November, I got a Last Giant Gold of 507.68. My run was very similar to Nick's in a lot of ways, however I was able to save time in 2 key places. The first, by getting a faster soul pickup without rolling, and the second was by using a risky strategy on the ladder before Cardinal Tower. Nick then adopted the strategy and fired back 5 days later with a time of 507.11. This was an incredibly good split with no obvious large time losses. We knew that on a perfect run you could get a 506, but something big would need to be found for it to go any lower than that. "10 days after Nick's record, I was talking to Doom about some stuff we'd been testing, and he showed me a trick where in things betwixt, you could grab the item behind the cart without breaking it, by running at it on a certain angle. We realized that by doing this immediately after character creation, you could pick up that soul item instead of the one in the river. This allowed us to save time by not having to do the soul cancel at Malentia, and by not having to go in the river. Overall, this saved around 2 seconds. Because of how difficult the trick was, and how little time it saved, most runners didn't adopt this for a while. The only exception was Fujo, who started running with it that same day. Despite grinding with the time save for hours, he didn't get a 506. He got a 505. This run wasn't bad by any means, but it wasn't as optimized as the runs that had come before it. What it did do was show other runners the potential of Kart Soul, and Nick quickly adopted the strategy. Despite a lot of potential time save, this gold stood for over a month, partially due to being a very strong gold, but also due to the fact that there was a lull in the Scholar Any% community over December 2020, with most top runners either moving on to other things or being too busy with IRL stuff to put in the grind. This lull continued until January 2021, when runners began to take more interest in the category again. On the 17th of January, Fujo beat his own record with a time of 5:05:02, only 2 frames away from a 5:04. Fujo thought that on a really good segment, he could maybe get a low 5:04, but to come anywhere near a sub 5, something much larger would need to be found. It was a seemingly normal Tuesday night. I had been browsing Twitch watching some DS2 speedrunning streamers. I went into CounterKitty's chat and encountered fellow runner Jean-Martin de Bergerac. He told me he'd been struggling with Dragon Riders, and I offered to hop in a VC and take a look. About an hour later, Nick joined and we began discussing potential new strats for the run. Jean offhandedly mentioned that he once survived falling down the elevator shaft in Forest of Fallen Giants by landing on the Ironclad's head, but this had happened off camera. I decided to turn on OBS and try jumping down over and over until this happened.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I
We're
got
just walking.
I got it second try and I'm like, holy shit, this could be something. And then you just never get it again. It's like, how do you get it that quickly but never again?
Yeah,
Can't
but just to be clear, you were just walking.
I don't know what I done.
Oh shit! Guys!
Oh.
Guys!
You got it! You got
You get it.
it! Yes!
Nice.
Got it on video, boys!
Oh.
After getting it on camera, we named the trick the genre, shared our findings, and hit the hay. The next morning, the community was buzzing. Using the footage, we began finding different setups that could make the drop reasonably consistent. I found the first setup, which used 2 planks of wood to try and make your character parallel to the wall before walking off. Shazin found the next setup, which used the same planks but at an angle to make the setup more consistent. Kwai found an interesting setup that involved looking down at a different plank, then rolling off so you had less momentum for the fall. Jean Martin even found a bowler setup, however this proved too inconsistent to actually use in runs. The skip was timed as being able to save as much as 8 seconds if done with a fast lineup. We did the maths and found that 5:05 minus 8 seconds came to well below 5 minutes. A bounty was put out by myself and Jean Martin, with each of us offering £20 to the first person to get a sub 5 minute last giant time. This prompted basically everyone to start grinding Scholar any % giant times. Nick came back to start grinding. Fuji, myself and Doom were grinding out runs offline for hours. Pseudo Stripey, a Scholar Old Souls runner, stopped running Old Souls and swapped his stream over to doing runs with the drop. Everyone was grinding for this bounty, but it didn't last long. The first world record set with this skip was a 5:03 by Nick. This run was incredibly mediocre, however he was able to save a ton of time just by getting the skip. The next world record was a 5:02 by Doom338. This run was for the most part even worse than Nick's, however due to a menuing mistake, Doom didn't have his bow equipped in the right hand for the drop. While trying to equip the bow for the setup, Doom accidentally did an attack with the axe instead. By some miracle, he just happened to be on the perfect line for the Jean drop, and survived his fall on much better pace than he would have been with a setup. The runner to finally get the bounty was Nick, with an end time of 4 minutes and 58 seconds. This run was really good. His pathing and menuing was incredibly clean the entire run, and he managed to get the Kart Soul first try, and a fast setup for the Jean drop.
Oh, you son of a bitch! Let's go! I think it is! It is! Yes! Let's go! World first, sub 5, let's giant!
Jean and I made good on our word, and Nick used the bounty money to buy himself an ice lolly, and gloated about it. That's where the last giant record stands for now, but with how new the tech is, there is a lot of potential for the time to go lower in the near future.